Hey guys, I am just popping back in to talk about why you would want your child's occupational therapist and speech pathologist to be talking to each other. So, occupational therapists are definitely experts in sensory processing disorders and writing goals and implementing um, goals that target sensory regulation, things that help your child who has sensory processing disorder, sensory delays, or any sensory issues. So, guess what? Did you know that sensory regulation also is important for speech and language development and speech and language therapy sessions? So, sensory regulation supports language development by making sure that the child can access self-generated language. I guarantee you that if I have a kiddo that is receiving both occupational and speech therapy, and this child has sensory processing disorder or any type of sensory delays or issues, and they need certain techniques to self-regulate or regulate their sensory system. If they come into my session and they are dysregulated and I don't know what those are, I can try some things, but in my opinion, I think it's better if I am able to communicate with the occupational therapist who may have already established techniques, whether it's fidgets or jumping or swinging or whatever it may be. They might know what works for your child to regulate their system. And then if I'm able to communicate with them, then I can try to incorporate that in my session if your child is dysregulated, so that then they can regulate and be able to be successful and to learn what we're doing in speech and language therapy sessions. Because if we're dysregulated, we are not going to be able to attend very well and learn language or whatever else we need to learn at that time. So if I'm able to talk to your child's occupational therapist and they tell me, when you see these signs and they're dysregulated, what really works for them is getting on that swing. And then I know and I can get them on the swing, the type of swing that the occupational therapist maybe is recommending. And we can either do that and they can regulate and we can go from there. Or, a lot of times I've done sessions while the child is on the swing as well. So that is very important for us to communicate. So if you have a kiddo that's maybe going to a clinic and OT speech are at the same clinic, hopefully they're talking to each other because they're working there, but schedules get busy and stuff. So just make sure that they're communicating with each other, especially if your kiddo has sensory needs. And then if they don't work at the same place and they're seeing speech and OT, even if this is in schools, make sure they're communicating with each other, because it's going to help the child be successful. There's also a lot of research that shows that sensory and movement in speech also promotes language and even sound production. Sensory bins, so with squishy toys and sand, or incorporating movement into your sessions, can help the child. Swinging can provide sensory input that allows the child to stay engaged in the activity and promote the learning and promote language. A lot of things that we can do with movement in terms of, like, let's say we're doing an obstacle course or whatever, we're using words like under, over, around. There's a lot of vocabulary that you can incorporate with movement as well. And then with the sensory toys, things like squishy and slimy and lots of adjectives that we can incorporate into your child's vocabulary. I think I'll probably do a separate video on that to go more in detail, because the main idea of this one was just to let you guys know that it is actually, especially if your kiddo has sensory needs, it's really important that occupational therapy and speech therapy communicate with each other if at all possible, just to maximize the outcome for your kiddo. And then here's another thing that if your child has a device, an AAC device, let me show you something that talks about sensory and gives your child options, maybe when they're in occupational therapy, to request certain sensory items. So that's a good thing for us to communicate or to show the occupational therapist, hey, this kiddo is using a device and here is the page that his sensory items are on. He can request them. Are there any items that are not on his or her device that you feel as an occupational therapist that are important for him or her to help with self-regulation that I should add on there so that they are able to select that when they need to regulate? So here I am in Touch Chat on a device, and this is a sensory page. So if I just go to home, I'll show you. If I go to home and then I go to groups, then you can see here is sensory. So if your kiddo has this device, this is Touch Chat. Of course, the other programs have options for this as well. And let's say that I've not hidden anything, but let's say that one of their items that helps them regulate is a squishy ball. Squishy ball. So they can request that, and they can request that at home, at OT, or whatever. But if your speech pathologist is also communicating with your OT in terms of letting them know how the child is communicating and showing them where the page is in case the child can't navigate to the page by themselves yet, the occupational therapist can model, oh, you want your squishy ball, you want your squishy ball. Or they can just see, you know, where the child is going to go to select that, or they can bring them to the page so that the child can then select it if they need it. So at the risk of using want, we try not to use want too much, but just as an example, so your kiddo can go, I want. And then go to groups, go to sensory, and maybe this is a fidget spinner. Fidget spinner. And then
I want spinner.
Or you can make it fidget spinner or whatever. You can do that. So then again, you can ask the occupational therapist, hey, can you take a look at these? And is there anything like, does this work, or should I, in this section, is there a specific item that really works to help this kiddo regulate? Should I add it there? And then just working together and communicating is going to be very helpful to make your help your child to be successful in both occupational therapy sessions and speech therapy sessions. And then, of course, if they have physical therapy too, communication between all providers can be super important for carryover and to maximize success.